Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar produced and presented by the Culture, Diversity, and Social Justice ASPA of the Society for Music Teacher Education. My name is Dr. Amanda Cristina Soto from Texas State University, and I have served as co-facilitator of the Culture, Diversity, and Social Justice ASPA since 2014. This webinar has been coordinated by the three co-facilitators of the ASPA. They are myself, Dr. Juliet Hess from Michigan State University, and Dr. Karen Salvador from University of Michigan, Flint. Information regarding these webinars can be found at our website, smte.us, under the ASPA tab, located at the top of the web page, and on our Facebook group page. Please make sure to subscribe to our listserv and Facebook group page. These links have been posted at the top of the chat box. Furthermore, this webinar will be recorded and posted on our SMTE webpage along with our past webinars to be utilized as a resource. Today's webinar focuses on the topic, What's Going On in Here? Remixing Music Education. This webinar invites audience members inside Sarah Minette's high school music classrooms where she is shaking things up. Inspired by the current discussions revolving around equity and access in music education, Sarah's approach to music education is grounded in culturally responsive pedagogy. Acknowledging differences within the classroom, Sarah and her students find commonalities in their music making. This session will offer contemplations on the necessity for music educators, as well as teacher educators, to consider what if, why, and with whom, and the implications these ponderings have for the future of music education. We'll hear from Sarah Minette in a few moments. For some quick instructions for those of you online, to view this webinar with the slides in full screen, simply click on the full screen icon with the four arrows shown in the upper right corner of the main screen. You can also hide the video panel by clicking on the View Tabs option. The microphone icon on your screen should have a red line across it indicating that it is now muted. Please stop your video by clicking on the video camera icon if I have not already done so for you. You will have opportunities to interact with our presenters at the end of the presentation. Please use the chat box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen to submit questions or comments when the Q&A portion of the webinar has begun. If you do not have access to a keyboard or to type your question, please unmute yourself and ask your question. When you're finished asking your question or responding to the presenters, please turn off your microphone. This session is scheduled to last 30 to 45 minutes, depending on the Q&A. So there's a 20-minute presentation, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. And now I would like to present Sarah Minette.
Well, thank you, Amanda, and for Juliet for inviting me to speak as part of this webinar series. As I was considering how I would approach this session, I thought back to my philosophy of learning and teaching statement that I recently rewrote. While I've thought about my philosophy, I had not necessarily thought about how to articulate it in words since my undergraduate degree program in the late 90s and early 2000s. Forcing myself to write about how I approach learning and teaching was really enlightening, and it revealed how much I've evolved as a teacher as well as a learner. This webinar will take us through a bit of that journey, but also the ways in which I consider what if, why, and with whom. This picture is my very first official, first day of school picture. I offer my background to provide some context to my upbringing. My official teaching career began in 2003. From 2003 to 2014, I was a band teacher. There were moments of guitar and boomwhackers that I reluctantly took on to fill my FTE, but I definitely was a band teacher. My understanding of music education was that of which I had experienced, beginning at a very young age with private piano lessons and then school music, band, marching band, jazz band, choir, solo and ensemble festival, all the things. I was constantly preparing for performance. So therefore, it felt quite natural for me to come into a job where we were performing and I was performing. The summer of 2014, I found myself at Arizona State as a doctoral student. I wasn't exactly sure what to expect, but one of the reasons I wanted to further my education is because I felt incomplete as a teacher. My time at the University of St. Thomas for my master's degree had hinted that there was possibly more to music education than band. And maybe this sounds silly, but this was my frame of mind at the time. I knew that there was more, but I had not experienced it as a learner, so I wasn't sure how to facilitate something more in the classroom. My time at ASU was life-changing. I was met with challenge, not only from the professors, but also my peers who made me start to consider, what if? It was incredibly scary. I felt like what I had done for 11 years was unjust to students who were not in my bands, but also partially to the students who were in my bands. I've come to realize I did create meaningful experiences for students, and that band is totally okay. I was a band kid. I am the daughter of 2 music educators, one of whom was my 5th and 6th grade band teacher. My career path was basically written before I was born. However, it was through the multiple learning experiences that allowed me to consider what if and how I can do this in my classrooms during my time at Arizona State. Learning is an incredible opportunity that we are granted each moment, but it is only through relevant and safe experiences that learning can truly be experienced. When I approach learning, or while I approach learning and teaching in the music classroom, I consider the following: relevancy of material, relationships, and student safety. My experiences as a learner and as an educator have taught me to value and prioritize these beliefs and are at the forefront of my mind each day as I work with learners of all ages. To engage in learning is to take risks that can only be accomplished in a safe setting. Learning is inherently vulnerable, with an expectation that there might be failure, but often in that moment of failure, the real learning occurs. As I consider what if, why, and with whom, there must be a sense of safety so that the students and myself in our vulnerable states can take intellectual and personal risks. However, this can only occur if the content is relevant to the students and their lives, as well as their diverse backgrounds and the learning community. I consider what prior knowledge and understanding the students with whom I work, as well as future students, may bring with them to the classroom. Relinquishing the title of expert and instead considering myself a co-learner has augmented the teaching and learning experience, not only for myself, but the students with whom I work. I am fortunate that I work in a school that values my experience and encourages me to dream big. 2 years ago, I envisioned a class that explored music, or that explores music through a social justice lens. This class was created with those students who were curious to explore music beyond the performance setting, explore music through the lens of the consumer, but also considering the ways in which music and society are interwoven. What if these students walked away from the class better informed through conversation about race, sexuality, gender, etc., that then inform how they interact with music? What kinds of conversations could we have? I created the class Music in America, Hip Hop, Rock, and Beyond with that in mind. Not a history of pop music or rock and roll history or a Bach to rock class, but instead a class that really dealt with the issues that students are experiencing in their day-to-day lives. This whole class has been a big experiment. What if we explored certain social movements and the music that came out of these movements? What then if we created podcasts? Students choose the movement and then the music to research. What if we got to use technology that I have no clue how to use to create these podcasts? What if it all works out? And I'm going to play a little clip of one of these podcasts real quick.
I have a dream. I got a dream. One day we gonna work it out. One day we gonna work it out. One day we gonna work it out. I have a dream. I got a dream. One day we gonna work it out. One day we gonna work it out. One day we gonna work it out.
I Have a Dream was one of the most famous speeches in history and was the turning point for the civil rights movement, and was the hope that racial discrimination against black people would end. It was the way Martin Luther King Jr. showed his dreams and hopes for America.
When African Americans had enough of the racism and discrimination against them, they banded together and marched. This was called the March on Washington, where the I Have a Dream speech happened. It not only was for freedom for black people, but also for equal jobs for black people too.
Many people were part of the march since it was for two causes, freedom and equal jobs for black people.
The main group was called Big Six. They were Philip Randolph, Whitney M. Young Jr., Martin Luther King Jr., James Farmer, Roy Wilkins, and John Lewis. Many songs were inspired.
I would love to keep playing that, but for time's sake, I'm going to move on. What if, instead of a guitar ensemble, we explore guitar through songwriting? This is a group of guitar students from last spring, and they're all first semester guitar. They had not played guitar, and this was their final project, which was to create a song from beginning to end, lyrics, chords, all of it. And this is what they came up with.
The first time I laid eyes on you, I knew there was no going back. Maybe one day I'll be with you, we could run away with no worries too. I see her across the school lunchroom, she's beautiful and don't use perfume. I'm passing the time. Too soon, finding a way out with this cool man, he's such a fool, thinking he could be my boo. He shows me his goofy smile, he makes me scream and run a mile. First time I laid eyes on you, I knew there was no going back.
It was a pretty fun song. So thinking about the role of music in our lives, how are we encouraging students to bring their music into the classrooms and share with us their culture? How are we embracing this to the fullest by putting away our preconceived notions of what music education should be versus what it could be? The next part that I'm going to read comes from a reflective blog post that I wrote last spring that occurred before and then after a class. So rewinding a year ago. So in my hip hop, rock, whatever class, we are working through a unit on grunge music. Of course, we are going to be learning about Nirvana. Guitar is a super important part of music, so why not try it out for a few days? I struggle at bar chords, but I have students who are great at it. So why not pass over the role of teacher or facilitator to the students? That's the plan, and they are looking forward to sharing their understanding of guitar with students who may never have played an instrument before. I think it'll be fun. 25 acoustic guitars rocking out to Smells Like Teen Spirit? Why not? And why not? Really, what is the worst thing that could happen? We sound crappy? That's okay. We learn from the experience? Even better. Perhaps some kiddos think, hey, this is pretty cool. I want to learn how to play guitar. Fast forward to after this experience. I broke up the class into 3 groups. I worked with the students who had never played guitar, and for some had never had touched an instrument before. And I taught them a simple bass line. There are some students who are comfortable and well-versed in power chords, and they worked with the other students. It was amazing. Karen Howard from the University of St. Thomas was in my classroom observing and caught it all on video. I told her beforehand, I have no idea how this is going to go. It could be awesome or it could completely flop. It was beyond my wildest imagination. Seriously, this was 100% unplanned, this whole jam session. And to quote a student, we aren't supposed to do this in school, but we just did.
2, beginning, 2, ready, and.
it just kind of went on, and it was just super fun. And it wasn't a guitar class, but we were studying music, and it was really a really cool experience. Learners from diverse backgrounds respond differently to similar artistic experiences based on their previous life experiences. Engaging in these discussions can lead to the conversations about why we can see differences in the same experience and being able to find commonalities in those experiences. Interrogating why artists, visual, musical, physical, make the decisions they do when creating art can lead to fruitful conversations that may enlighten learners as to why they may perceive differences in a similar piece of art. But also considering, why are we engaging in music education? Is the purpose of our job to prepare or train the next group of performers of music educators or of music teachers? Perhaps we can consider the anti-approach that Juliet Hess so eloquently shared with us at the most recent NAFME research conference held in Atlanta last month. Why might taking an anti-racist, anti-sexist, and anti-homophobic stance in music education propel us forward rather than backward? Hess highlighted communal music making, critical conversations, and songwriting as resistance as key elements to practicing anti-racism in the music classroom. Students are engaged in the world outside of music through social media. It might be to our advantage to work with them, using music as a vehicle to help them, as well as ourselves, sort through this political environment. Whether we want to admit it or not, education is political. As an educator, my consideration of with whom I am engaging encourages me to facilitate a safe space for students to be vulnerable in their intellectual risk-taking and early understandings of new material. Additionally, I am often motivated to step aside and allow students to struggle with this new information together, process the information together, and make meaning as individuals, but as well as a learning community. I must also consider my own background in relationship to the students' backgrounds and how they may perceive me. This awareness is just as important as students move on to higher education opportunities, where many more new experiences wait for them. Without safety, they may struggle to feel successful. So this was an experience last year that has really remained in my heart. Manuel, Juan, and Jonathan are all from Ecuador. They surprised our guitar class one day. They had been working on this on their own, performing one of their favorite traditional folk songs, La Tamia. And Juan picked up the panpipes like 2 nights before and learned this. And they are singing in the native Ecuadorian language, which is Quicha, I think. Here's a little bit of this. Listen to that all day. this was really an incredible experience, and the students were just mesmerized by the playing and Juan's singing. And they did this all on their own. And I should note that Jonathan on the very far right with the hat, he comes in every day. Sometimes I have to make sure that he's not skipping class, but he comes in every day to practice guitar, and he's learning his music from home, and it's a way for him to stay connected. Juan sadly moved back to Ecuador last year. His family was fearful for being deported. He was not able to obtain citizenship, and he wouldn't have been able to obtain citizenship for another couple of years. So with the political climate, they made the decision to move back, and we miss him dearly. He was just a light. And I remember him telling me, music is me, it is in my soul, and he just loves music. I should note that I am not a guitar player. I always say it was a good thing that the hiring committee did not ask me to play guitar for them when I was interviewing, because they wouldn't have hired me on my skills. But what they wanted was someone who could dream big and create experiences for students, and with the students that went beyond what was already happening in our school. I don't have the pedagogical know-how to teach these classes. I never took guitar growing up. I never played in a band like a garage band. I am a thoroughbred, classically trained musician by all accounts. And I wonder what potential disservice we might be doing when we start having a garage band pedagogy class that strips away the basic elements of being in a band. I wonder what will happen to hip-hop music if we have a hip-hop pedagogy class where we begin to teach teachers how to teach hip-hop, as Adam Cruz says, schoolifying hip-hop. Perhaps what we need to do is create these experiences, and multiple experiences, an opening of experiences for future teachers. I'm not sure that we need the tools to teach, because we have them. As musicians, we have an understanding of music. But as educators and teacher educators, perhaps we might want to allow ourselves to step back a bit and see what might happen. Like life, learning is messy and not something that can be experienced in a linear fashion, as the picture might suggest. There is an end goal that may look and feel a bit different for each student, and we might not arrive there at the same time. The path that we take may be varied, bumpy, and scary. We might not even be in the driver's seat for some of it, or even most of it. We might be co-piloting or in the back seat, enjoying the scenery or the learning that's occurring. However, with persistence, trust in ourselves and the students, we do arrive. Thank you. That's it.
All right. Thank you so much, Sarah, for your wonderful presentation. At this time, we welcome questions and comments from our attendees. Please use the chat box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen to submit questions or comments. If you don't have access to a keyboard to type your question, please unmute yourself and ask your question. When you're finished asking your question or responding to the presenters, please turn off your microphone. Thank you, and let's begin. I have a question.
Yeah.
I'll get started. I think this is a beautiful presentation, one that I know many of my band students would enjoy. What I found in doing some of the bimusicality research is that a lot of our students are coming to us not just being able to play their trumpet or their horn as instrumental music ed majors, but they're actually in other types of bands and playing other types of instruments. And so I think, as you stepped outside of the boundary, and went outside of your box, I mean, I think it's out there. I think there are students who have this capability, but they're not getting the classes to be trained. I mean, do you see in any of the university curriculums, or have you talked with at the different universities you were at, in terms of how has a curriculum changed for undergraduate music education students instrumentally, with an instrumental focus?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think even having like a secondary general music class, I was in Dr. Howard's class 2 nights ago on Tuesday, and just even acknowledging that secondary general music does exist and it's actually really fun. And kind of one of the great things about it is that there's not a really standard way of teaching it, so that there's a lot of opportunities to kind of do what the school community might be interested in. But again, thinking about, like, I wonder if it's more about creating the experiences. So one of the things that Karen did with her class this past week is they had to form bands and do covers, and then they had to perform them. And so that was basically kind of the direction that she gave them, is that you have to pick a pop song from the past 3 years, I think, and do it on some kind of instrument that maybe you're not as familiar with, and then figure out how to put it together. And I think that experience, and talking with the students, that experience alone gave them a little bit of a boost of confidence that this is something that's feasible, and that there might not necessarily be a way to teach that it's more about the experience. If that makes sense.
Yeah. You know, the other question I have for you is that, were you able to offer these classes because you had room in your schedule, or what kind of advice would you have for these band directors who have already a full schedule of teaching?
So I was hired specifically for these classes. So we are beyond fortunate at our school. And we have 4 full-time music teachers, which is amazing considering we are a city school, like located right in the city of Minneapolis. And so we have a band person, although we don't like to say this, we like to talk about us as music teachers, but we have a band person, an orchestra person, and a choir person, and then me. And so I was hired to teach all these classes. They wanted somebody who was really passionate about it, but also somebody who didn't want to see it as a stepping stone into a potential band position.
That's great. That's really nice.
There's a question here. Logistically, how do you allow for whole class as well as individual artistic expression? This is from Laneka. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Well, I mean, if you were to walk into my classroom, it's very much organized chaos. So we do like individual songwriting projects, but then we also do cover projects. We also do group songwriting projects. The kids are constantly playing and experimenting as much as possible. So it's a messy room. If you were to come into my room, you'd be like, oh my God, what's happening? There's all this sound and there's people talking, but they're all working on something. So I think a nice blend of being able to write their own music and then do covers, kind of, they get to guide the curriculum. Carlos asked, if it's all about the experience, why should we treat music as such when other classes such as math and science are not about the experience? I don't know if they're not about the experience. I think that maybe some mathematicians might say they really get excited about the experience of solving an equation. I don't know. That's a hard question to answer. Are there any textbooks or materials? Music Outside the Lines. This book by Maud Hickey has been really, really great. That has helped me a lot. And honestly, just doing a lot of research and talking with my friends about what they do. And then just thinking big and going, I wonder what would happen if I did this. So one of the things that we did last semester in Guitar 2, and we're now going to continue to do it, is record an album. I was like, I wonder what would happen if we record an album. And so I got in touch with a local sound guy at a local college. I called him up and I said, hey, how interested would you be in recording a bunch of high school kids? And so we did it, and then we got the raw files back, and the kids mixed the album, and then we sold it for charity, and it was like the most amazing thing ever. And I think it's just allowing yourself to make mistakes with the kids. We tried something in jazz band 2 weeks ago before break, and it totally flopped. And I was like, thanks for trying that with me. Yeah, we're not gonna pursue this, and it's okay. And the kids were like, that's okay. So it was fine. At what age and in what context would you discuss sexuality, homophobia, and transphobia in a music class? So we actually just finished doing a unit on isms in music. And I need to preface this by my my school in particular is very much a progressive school, and that these issues are consistently and constantly talked about. We talk about whiteness, we talk about blackness, we talk about being colorblind and racism and all the things. And I think it's really, there is no administration issues. They want us to talk about these things because these are very real things. And that students exist. So, we talk about racism, and I'm the minority in most of my classes. And so when we talk about racism, we talk about empathy and knowing versus being empathetic. And, I cannot possibly understand what it's like to walk down Lake Street at night compared to so-and-so in my class who is a young Black man. And we talk about, I could never say, I know how you feel. And then in terms of homophobia or sexuality, you can even start at a young age and think about, like, how do you group individuals? How do you address the class? Are you addressing boys and girls? Or are you addressing them as singers or musicians or guitarists? I think all those are ways that you can address these without having to talk about, like, having to say homophobia. And we could talk for hours on that. And there's a lot of great people in our profession that are really have really great suggestions. But we, in the class that I teach, we get incredibly explicit. Like, we just did an analysis of blurred lines, and we talked about rape culture and how all the things. So I feel lucky that we get to talk about those things because, again, these are things that students are really concerned about. How could we incorporate some of these elements into a regular orchestra or band program? Elements, I think, I guess you can, community practice. We can do community practice. We can do small groups. We can talk about what it means to be a musician. Not just in school music. We can talk about opportunities that students can possibly have outside of school. I think a lot of students think that school music only exists, that you can only play saxophone in a band. That's how I was. It took me for a really long time to realize that there are other opportunities to play saxophone outside a band. And it felt very foreign to me. But if I would have had an opportunity to just sit down and jam with some friends or learn how to play guitar, that would have been really great. These are really great questions. So thank you so much. As an instrumentalist and future band director, hopefully, I would love to change the norm of only offering history of rock as the standard, and in some classes, the only general music. How would you approach an administrator to discussing changing your assigned section of history of rock to a more experience-based classroom instead of the easy and boring class? What if you somehow, if that's kind of what's set right now, I wonder if there's a way that you could incorporate guitar into that, because guitar is like one of the mainstays of rock. So if your budget allows, or if you did a GoFundMe thing, could you get a set of guitars, ukuleles, and learn rock music through guitar? Or if you have technology, would you be able to use something like Soundtrap, which is what I've been using, versus GarageBand, because it's free and collaborative, to create songs? And then maybe do a poll of the students and ask what are some of the things that they'd be interested in learning. That's how we got guitar here at South, was the the teachers, my music team, the music team polled the school and asked, what do you want? What do you want to learn? And guitar was one of the big things. In an orchestra setting, guidance and careful practice are essential to growth. Do these kinds of activities, performing covers on new instruments, derail students from developing more advanced skills? I don't think so. And I'd wonder, what do you mean by advanced skills? They're listening, they're learning chords, they're learning theory through chords, they're singing, they're expressing. You know, that's interesting. The jazz band kids, we got done with a big concert a couple weeks ago, and to alleviate our brains and not have to worry about performing, we did a cover project in the style of the Roots, you know, Jimmy Fallon and the Roots. And it was amazing what they came up with, because they learned everything by ear. They, you know, figured out how to work together as a group, and they performed it in, you know, very informal setting. And we asked, I kind of did a Q&A with them afterwards. I'm like, so, you know, you just spent a week learning a song that you're not really performing for anybody except the class. How is this helping you as a musician? And hands went up. They're like, oh, we were listening to each other. Oh, we were communicating with each other. We developed our ears, you know, and we had to figure out what worked and what didn't work. We had to transpose and do all the things. And it was amazing. And they learned different instruments. And so I don't think it's going to derail from developing more advanced skills. If anything, I think it's going to promote more advanced skills, to whatever degree that means. I think this would be great for students who don't connect with the standard orchestra, band, choir, and for kids who do connect with that. I think music is music, and I would love to see as many students, all musicians, be a part of this. Okay. Also, most pop songs barely have more than 4 chords. At that point, how would you have them progress and learn extended chords, progressions, and other techniques for their instruments? That's up to them. That's not the focus of guitar class. Guitar class for me is getting kids to a point where they can go home and play guitar. And I have to, I didn't really share this, but most of my students are very, very, for the most part, beginning ELL students. So very limited language acquisition. So just the fact that they get to create a musical thing is amazing. And that is the most important thing to me, that they see themselves as creative human beings who are musical. That is more important than learning, you know, as many chords as possible. Mastery of, my last questions was referencing mastery of instruments. I don't know. I think mastery of instruments is a lifelong endeavor. I haven't mastered the saxophone. I've been playing it since I was in 5th grade. So what do your colleagues think of what I'm doing? My colleagues love what I'm doing. We are the best team ever. They are so supportive of me. They love what I do. They are, thank you, Jalisha. Are they jealous? I don't think so. They're like, they are like, yeah, you do you and we'll do us, but we work together. I mean, we are so supportive of each other. It is the most beautiful relationship I've ever experienced. I feel like there's might be some Facebook things, no. Oh, Jesse Rathgeber, Teaching for Musical Understanding. Thank you. That's another great book as well. And yeah, Small Acts of Subversion. So yeah, I kind of have the dream job. You know, 10 years ago, you wouldn't have paid me enough money to do this job. And then my life just got flipped upside down at Arizona State. And I am just, I'm so blessed. Do the students have access to these instruments at home? No, some of them have guitars, but most of them don't. So, but we do have class every day. So we're pretty lucky. And a lot of kids come in during their free time or during lunches or after school. Sometimes I have to kick them out just because they just love playing guitar. You know, I have 4 sections of guitar right now and it's full. It's really, really cool. Do you have students in your general music class who desire music? Okay, I should read this out loud. Do you have students in your general music class who desire to pursue music at a post-secondary level? Actually, yeah, I have multiple students who are interested in doing sound design. And one of them's going to Columbia next year, and totally self-taught. He was super interested in creating music, and he taught himself how to use Ableton, Pro Tools, all the things. And he is my main go-to guy when trying to figure out GarageBand and Soundtrap. So never took a music course until my Music in America course, and he's going to go into sound production. And people might think, oh, that's not music. That's totally music. You have to know like how to work different sounds. It is a form of music. Do you see need to change in music education admission policies in higher ed? Of course I do. Yes. If we are going to continue to have classes like this, and we want to continue engaging students in all facets of music making, absolutely, we need things to change. What is the youngest age group you have tried this program with? Do you think starting this program in younger students would bring more students into the high school music classroom? So I've only ever taught, I taught band I've taught band 5th through 12th grade, but I've only had like general music classes in high school specifically. I taught a boom whacker class. It was a 6-week class devoted to boom whackers several years ago. I don't know if that would encourage anybody to go into high school general music classes, but I think, as many musical experiences that we can get, that we can encourage with students at an early age, I think the more we encourage them to be musical, and it doesn't have to be school music, it can be their own music. I think we have to remind ourselves that their music exists outside of school, and there's lots of beautiful musicians and fabulous musicians who create music without necessarily higher education degrees. The story of your student pursuing a degree in sound design, yeah. And I had a student last year who was really interested in pursuing like sound production as well. So we kind of did some search. I'm not exactly sure. He's a senior right now, so I need to touch base with him and see what his planning on doing. Do any students involved in this class later choose to participate in other music, such as band, orchestra, or chorus? Let's see, that's a good question. Not necessarily. That being said, we do at our high school have a beginning band and a beginning strings program, which is really cool. And we do have students that start out in beginning band in 9th grade or 10th grade, and they, continue with band. But no, this is not meant to feed the band, choir, orchestra program. We are the music program, and so we want students involved in music. And again, we struggle, like my colleague Eric, he doesn't see himself as the band director. He is a music teacher. And so our focus is to get as many kids in creating musical experiences as possible. So yeah.
All right. Well, these are really great questions. I'm wondering, do you ever think you might collaborate with the other teachers and the other ensembles?
Yeah, I think so. It's just one of those things of logistics. Mm-hmm. We do have students. I have a lot, I do have a number of guitar students that will play, that are maybe in choir, that will play for a choir concert or whatever, like a company. But yeah, I think so. As we grow, this is still like a little fledgling program yet in terms of what I'm doing. It's only 3 years old, and there's only so many hours in a day. And we want to do all the things. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we just have to like breathe.
Yes, I totally understand. All right. Well, we have come to the end of our time for this webinar. We invite you to submit a webinar proposal for the 2018-2019 academic year if your area of expertise, research, and experience aligns with our mission statement that you can find on our website. The deadline is August the 1st, 2018, and we usually have about a month turnaround time before you find out. And we can always schedule a time that will work for you, and you don't even have to leave your office, as you can see here. So for now, thank you for your attendance and participation today, and special thanks to our presenter, Sarah. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.